Hey guys, I realise that this is a bit off topic compared to what I usually focus on with my channel, but it's such an interesting topic that I was just inspired to make a video about it. I mean, the channel's just called Andy Hutchinson, not Andy Hutchinson Photography, so I guess I could talk about the 1958 British Hammer Studios thriller The Snorkel, If the Mood Took Me, or Tchaikovsky's Serenade Melancholique in B-flat minor for violin and orchestra, for that matter. But I realise most of you originally showed up for photography related stuff, so rest assured I'm still doing that. I'm just switching my 80mm macro for a 10mm wide angle. And if you're new here, then welcome. Hope you enjoy the video. At the time of writing this early part of the video, I'm not sure if I'll be swearing a lot, but just be aware that I do enjoy a solid Anglo-Saxon invective every now and then. And so if you don't care for beautiful profanity, please tread carefully. Now, where was I? Oh yeah. Apple's Vision Pro. What in the name of all that's As someone who's been firmly immersed in the Apple ecosystem since the very beginning, I always look forward to the annual announcements to see what cool new technology they're working on. I'm not one of those fist-pumping Tom Cruise on Oprah-style whoopers, but I do get genuinely excited to see what direction Apple is heading in. And this year, the heavily leaked one more thing moment was, of course, the Vision Pro, or what Apple are calling the first spatial computer, and what the trolls on TikTok are calling the world's most expensive ski mask. I sat through the entire keynote like a good member of the cult of Apple should, and then I watched a bunch of videos of other folks' reactions to it, and then I watched some videos from people who've actually tried the Vision Pro, and I have some thoughts. Reading about the Vision Pro and watching the reaction videos, the first thing that struck me was how similar it all was to the Apple Watch announcement. When Apple announced that bit of hardware back in 2014, it was heavily criticised for pretty much everything. Looks, battery life, size and controls, but mainly for its utility. You know, the who would buy this crowd. And I'm getting very similar vibes from the reaction to the Vision Pro. In fact, I watched a TikTok during my alone time on that morning in which a bloke by the name of Jason Pargin was predicting that nobody would wear such a device before Apple had even officially announced it. This shock of the new seems to confront people time and time again. Early critics of the steam train claim that the jarring motion of the train would unhinge the mind and drive sane people mad, or best of all, that the uteruses of female passengers would fly out of their bodies. I don't know if the Vision Pro has brought on any cases of the sudden unprompted evacuations of uteruses, but it certainly seems to be triggering quite a few people. The fact is, this is a first of its kind device in much the same way that the Apple Watch was. The Vision Pro is a computer you wear on your face in the same way that the Apple Watch is a computer that you wear on your wrist, and the iPhone is a computer you use on the toilet. I'm not concerned personally with how the device looks physically on someone's head, because I understand that we tend to just get used to stuff. I remember seeing someone walking down the street with a massive pair of Bluetooth headphones on for the first time many years ago and thinking they looked like a complete tit. Now it's as normal to me as someone wearing a coat or a baseball cap. Now, before we talk about technical matters and the price of the device, let's talk about its uses and who it's aimed at. During that keynote, Apple put forward a great many different use cases for the device, some of which seemed more sticky to me than others. I'm prepared to believe that the display on those twin tiny 4K screens is sensational, but I think using the Vision Pro as a work device will not be the cakewalk that Apple are suggesting it is. That being said, I can picture many scenarios when having some perfectly self-contained head-mounted computer would be highly desirable. Instead of having a traditional desk and chair setup, you could recline anywhere comfortable and require no more space than a human body takes up. No desk required. Anyone who works in an environment where confidentiality is essential might like that self-contained display system. I'm also prepared to believe that you can use your regular applications with the Vision Pro, Microsoft Word or Adobe Photoshop. But the question nobody's asking is there any advantage to doing so? I'm sure that Apple have done an incredible job with the eye and hand tracking tech in this device. I'm just having a bit of difficulty envisioning editing a photograph in Adobe Photoshop using eye and hand gestures. And even if I could, what advantage would doing so in an enclosed head-mounted computer have over using a regular monitor? I'm all for advancements in technology, but there has to be a clear advantage to doing so above and beyond looking like you're from the future that Bill and Ted envisaged. Apple have designed the device so that you could also use your voice to control it and to input text into it. I've had Siri on my devices for 12 years now, and I still don't use it to communicate with my Mac, even though my only co-worker is my missus. The only time I'm not self-conscious about using Siri is when I'm using it to turn on the living room lights. I certainly can't picture myself vocalizing the esoteric shit I type into Google search boxes. Actually, thinking about it, you know who's going to absolutely love this device? Boomers. They walk around the supermarket with their paperback book-sized smartphones on speaker mode, having intimate conversations about hemorrhoids with their daughter-in-law. Also, boomers are the only demographic that can probably afford one too. If there's no advantage to using your work computer strapped to your head, then you're probably gonna stick to your regular monitor, right? Usability and technology be damned. This is a purely practical consideration, and therefore, assuming you don't just want to show off how wealthy you are, pragmatism will play a central role. The stuff that appealed to me during that keynote was all the immersive entertainment related stuff, and I can't help thinking that this, and not editing giant floating PowerPoint decks and being productive and shit, is actually going to be the most popular use case. And of all those entertainment use cases, far and away the most appealing one to me was using the Vision Pro on an aeroplane or public transport. Particularly that first one, because unless you're a one percenter in a first class pod, all air travel sucks. The absolute worst thing about flying anywhere is being in the forced company of several hundred totally minging strangers. Pair the Vision Pro with a good pair of noise cancelling headphones, and I strongly believe you have a dream device for air travel. Instead of listening to a baby screaming its lungs out, the old lady in the middle seat snoring, the business bros in front of you having a casually misogynistic conversation about the flight attendant, the background noise of the plane, instead of watching that tiny seat back screen or your iPad and getting distracted by an episode of The Office playing on the seat back screen of the guy across the aisle, instead of all that, you can block all sound and vision out, dial up some huge ass 100-inch screen and watch a movie completely isolated from everything that's going on around you. I tell you, if I was a frequent flyer, I'd be the absolute first in the queue at the Apple store when this thing gets released. I'd be camped out on the fucking sidewalk a week ahead of release. Maybe it's because I'm autistic, but it's the possibility of isolation from the outside world that is far and away the most appealing aspect of this device to me. And yes, I know, battery, but maybe you're near a USB socket or you brought some spares. Also, this is your first generation device and I've no doubt whatsoever that stuff like battery life will improve with each iteration. Playing games on the Vision Pro seems like it could be an improvement over traditional VR systems for one simple reason. No controllers required. I'm guessing we're not going to be seeing Cyberpunk 2077 in ray tracing overdrive mode, but it doesn't have to be, remember, because it's an AR VR system that can utilize the environment around you. Can you imagine how much more fun a commute on public transport would be if you could gamify it? Walking Dead Commuter Edition, anyone? One of the big appeals is obviously going to be TV and movies. Kicking back in the lazy boy with a beer and watching your favourite show in one-man IMAX. Bring it on. Admittedly, it'd be a bit strange in a communal family or household setting. For starters, everyone would need their own headset. And let's face it, snuggling on the couch with your significant other is going to be far less romantic with intrusive high-tech ski mask face computers on. I'm not much of a sports fan, but the embellished sports experience seems like something futuristic. It's early days yet, but can you imagine how immersive something like Formula One car racing could be? Little virtual cars jockeying for position on your coffee table? The development of this device and its release to the general public has certainly got me thinking about all the possible ways it could be used for entertainment purposes. Then there are the creative possibilities of using the Vision Pro. Based on the amount of airtime that Apple devoted to creative applications as opposed to the business stuff, I'm not sure this use case factored terribly high up their list during its development. But when you start digging into it, there are actually some tasty possibilities that become possible with this device. Apple did spend some time talking about photography and how it related to the Vision Pro. The 3D photographs seemed a bit gimmicky to me, but the idea of being able to stand in front of a huge digital presentation of one of my own photographs is a compelling thought. You see, the big problem with digital photography is it's hard to get a sense of scale. But if you have what amounts to an immersive digital art gallery at your disposal, then it'd be a fabulous way of experiencing that landscape through a photographer's eyes. During the keynote, they showed a visual presentation of a DJ using an AR mixing deck. It sounds like a great idea, but it brings me back to my original question. What advantage do you gain from DJing that way? Believe it or not, I actually was a club DJ working in the southwest of the UK. Big up the Bristol Massive, yes, yes, all the way through the big room era of the 1990s and into the 2000s. And I can categorically state that the best way to DJ to entertain a crowd is to be in the moment with them, feeding off their energy. I realised it was probably just a technology demonstration, but DJing with a Vision Pro on your head lands the wrong side of gimmicky for me, and I think I'd rather wear a mankini and nipple clamps than a face-mounted computer in that scenario. However, music production is another matter entirely. Can you imagine an immersive version of something like Ableton or GarageBand? The myriad ways you could visually represent music, loops, beats and vocals. The incredible music mechanisms you could recreate within that AR VR space. If this eye and hand tracking is so good, then surely it would be an excellent way of controlling digital instruments. I'm also seeing huge possibilities for creating original artwork. With this incredible new eye and hand tracking, I reckon it'd be amazing for things like digital painting or sculpting. This stuff's been possible on VR systems for years, of course, but the point is you don't need controllers with the Vision Pro, and it's apparently exponentially more accurate with its tracking. And then there's using the Vision Pro as a means of communication, which I must admit I'm not terribly convinced by. Apple's solution to the issue of video calls was to create a digital persona. You scan your face using the device And this is then used to create an advanced avatar that mimics your eye and facial movements as tracked within the mask. The problem is that they call this thing the Vision Pro, and their keynote placed a heavy emphasis on the business-related use cases for the device. But if you're doing some important deal or having some serious meeting, is a sub-Pixar digital representation of you really a professional look? Being let go by Janice in HR is bad enough, but if she looked like Riley from Pixar's Inside Out, I reckon it would probably be adding insult to injury. There are cases when the anonymity afforded by a digital persona would of course be useful. Anyone working in a controversial industry might be far more inclined to take video calls if they could hide behind a semi-realistic looking avatar. But on the whole, I'm just not seeing the communication-related possibilities of this device. I ask again, what clear advantage does taking a FaceTime call with a Vision Pro have over taking it on my MacBook or my iPhone? There's no doubting that Apple's solution to the conundrum of wearing a face computer in a video call is innovative and clever, but so what? One of the biggest complaints about the Vision Pro relates to its price, $3,500 or over $5,000 here in Australia. The moment Apple sticks the word Pro on a product, you know it's not going to be at the budget end of the product range. So I'm not sure why anyone was surprised at that price tag. But here are my thoughts on the price. Firstly, I'm not suggesting that it's cheap, but I must admit to always being confused by suggestions that something is expensive. In the case of the Vision Pro, it's a first generation product, so it's expensive in relation to what exactly? There's nothing like it on the market. What are you basing your comparison on? And if it's out of your price range, then don't buy it? After all, Apple aren't obliged to price things at a specific level, are they? There's no legislation out there that means that they have to make their products affordable. I'd quite like a Mercedes G-Wagon, but I don't get all pissed off at Mercedes because I'd have to remortgage my bloody house to buy one. It's capitalism 101, isn't it? But let's say, for the sake of argument, that I'm basing a possible purchase of this device on certain specific use cases. Would I, for instance, buy one of these instead of a 65-inch OLED TV? Would I, for instance, buy one because I'm a frequent flyer? Would I, for instance, buy one because I live in a tiny apartment with no room for a computer desk and monitor? Everyone will come to their own decisions on the matter, but you cannot categorically state that $3,500 is expensive when that might be a small price for certain people in certain circumstances. If I lived on my own and had the disposable income, I can categorically state that I would buy a Vision Pro on day one. There is no doubt at all that this device is a gamble on Apple's part. But do you really think that a company with a market cap of nearly $3 trillion has not considered that? That they haven't done just the teeniest bit of homework? Tim Cook is a glorified accountant. He was Steve Jobs' supply chain guy. Do you really think he's going to greenlight an entirely new type of Apple product without crunching the numbers? That he'd steer the massive global Apple production machine in a new direction without considering how it would need to be sold in the first place and then supported afterwards? Any push into new territory is gonna meet pushback. Yes, it's a punt, but many Apple products have been. A mobile telephone without a physical keyboard? Ridiculous! It strikes me that Apple are keenly aware of the limited potential customer base for a first generation product like this. They are not expecting it to outsell the iPhone. They have created something very new, and it will take time for the best use cases for this device to become apparent. And you know why? Because it's the users that decide how a device will be used, not the company that made it. Cameras became such a massively important feature of the smartphone market because we, the end users, made it so. This is the first iteration of an entirely new type of device and an entirely new platform. Over the next decade and beyond, Apple will iterate new versions of their Vision platform. As they have with all of their product ranges, they will release products at varying price ranges. I'm not sure we'll ever see a cheap version of this device, but over time we will see models pitched a wider audience. We'll also undoubtedly see premium versions with bloody Gucci headbands and stuff. Some of the stuff that has the pundits writing off this device before it even goes on sale, such as the battery life, will be fixed, iterated, tweaked and upgraded. The weight of the device will be improved, the software will be refined and modified. I have no doubt at all that a future version of this product will reach a point of development and a price level that will prove to be a tipping point, and people like you and I might buy one. And Apple could of course accelerate this significantly by simply opening the API up to Pornhub. And that'll do us for this video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Do let me know if you'd like to see more of this sort of thing in the comment section below. I'm a big boy, I can take it. Please like the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to see more of my revolutionary immersive spatial content in your YouTube feed. Till the next time, guys, ta-ta.